Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Town of Queensbury Planning Board meeting for Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. This is our second meeting for the month of September. This is our 13th meeting this year, and this is our 9th meeting under the new pandemic procedures for the Town Planning Board. I'd like to draw your attention to the illuminated exit signs in the event that we have an emergency. That is the way out. If you have an electronic device, a cell phone or other electronic device, if you would either turn it off or turn the ringer off so it doesn't interrupt our proceedings. I'd also like to draw attention to members of the public that may be viewing this meeting on the town YouTube Live website. Every application that we have before us this evening does have an option for a public hearing that we will be exercising. And if you wish to, when they come up, if you wish to make public comment via telephone and you are not here in person, you may do so by calling area code 518-761-8225. And I'll remind that number, I'll try to remember to remind people of that number at every public hearing. We have a number of administrative items before we get to our regular agenda this evening. One item that we're going to be moving to the end of our agenda is an item that we began discussing last week, which is a recommendation to the Queensbury Town Board for adoption of local law to amend the Queensbury Town Code to establish renewable energy systems and facilities regulations. We requested some additional time to study some of the information and documents associated with that recommendation, and we moved it from last week to tonight, and so we will be discussing that after our regular agenda. Let's see, we also have Site Plan 44-2019, the Glen at Highland Meadows, requesting a one-year extension. Laura?
They are still working out information with the freshwater wetlands in Army Corps, and due to COVID, that's been very difficult. So that's why they're requesting their one-year extension.
Okay. And I believe we have a draft resolution for that.
Motion to approve a one-year extension for Site Plan 44-2019 and Freshwater Wetlands Permit 4-2019, the Glen at Highland Meadows, to the September, we just, a one-year extension. Got it, sorry. Done with the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion for the Glen? Hearing none, Maria, could you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Hunsinger?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Valentine?
Yes.
Traver?
Yes. Next, also under administrative items, we have subdivision modification 6-2019 for Barry and Jacqueline Lashinsky, also requesting a one-year extension. Laura?
Again, due to COVID, they've had experienced some run-in with signatures, so they were requesting their one-year extension as well.
Okay, any discussion on that request? I believe we have a draft resolution.
Motion to approve a one-year extension for subdivision modification 6-2020, Barry and Jacqueline Lashinsky.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Maria, could you call the vote for us, please?
Ms. White?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Hunsinger?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Yes. Next, under administrative items, we have Site Plan 70-2014 for James Verano, also requesting an additional one-year extension. Is Mr. Verano present? Good evening.
Good evening.
I think it was, the suggestion was offered to you that you come in person tonight regarding this extension because This would be extension number 6
That's
on
correct.
this application, which generally exceeds what we normally do. We were interested to hear your discussion about the need for a 6th extension.
Well, it's due to a closing. I don't actually own the property as of yet. I've had this, tried to purchase it in the last 6 to 7 years from Mr. Fazio. And I've been pretty much ready, except for there's some issues with, well, Mr. Fazio could maybe elaborate a little bit on that, would be more of, I think he has to do some things to get ready for the closing. I'm ready with my attorney, so I didn't want to lose the property, but we have not gone to close yet, and I've done everything I could possibly do. Now, I think it is moving forward. The last I knew, you were trying to get my lawyer to handle, Tim Schuler, Attorney Tim Schuler, to handle his part and his side. Because his attorney is not in the picture anymore, so to speak.
You're requesting a 1-year extension. How close do you believe that you are to resolving this?
I'm ready, and I think that what do you figure? I mean, he had issues that were beyond, in the past. He had lost his daughter during the last 2 years ago, and so there was some understandings there. I think the board probably all knows of this. But anyways, I think he's much closer now. I don't know all the issues.
Maybe the other gentleman could come up and get on.
Yeah, he might be able to.
So, excuse me, prior to you doing that, can you just wipe down the mic so that Mr. Fazio?
Oh, yes, thank you, Laura.
Sure,
Underneath that,
There's some wipes underneath that.
I'll get that.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, here comes the heavy artillery.
Hey, I've lost weight.
There you go. This is,
so Mr. Fazio can speak and state your name for the record, sir?
Yeah, hi, the name is John Fazio. I own the property. We've had some issues with taxes that we had to square away, and some other things, and the COVID things that's put everything behind as well.
Okay, have all those items been settled? Eyesight, obviously.
No, not quite, but we're getting closer than we ever been.
Well, this started in 2014, I understand.
Yeah. Again, there's some things beyond my control that I just trying to, believe me, I want to get this deal done. Yeah, if we can get one more extension, that would really be helpful.
How close do you feel that you are to getting this resolved?
I think within the next few months we get it done.
2 months?
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
No?
Oh, thank you.
Okay,
I see another gentleman
Thank
standing. Did you wish to comment on this as well?
Yes, please. Stuart Thomas.
Thank you.
There.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Stuart Thomas. I helped with the original application. I'm with Reality Realty, and I obviously have a buyer and a seller who are willing to consummate the deal. Part of the problem is that it's turned into something that an attorney has to handle with the state.
Why is that?
Because the state has a lien on the property.
Aha, okay.
So it's not,
So you have 2 owners and 1 buyer.
as we all do. But yes, it's whenever there's a lien on a property, the lien has to be cleared first. And it's my understanding, having talked to the state, that they're willing to clear their lien from the property. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not an attorney, so we've had to engage an attorney to work with the state to do so. But they seem, knowing the facts of the property and the lien, they seem to be willing to remove it. It's just a question of, with everything going on with COVID and having to have an attorney do it and et cetera, it's...
Do you have anything in writing from them indicating that?
I do have something in writing. I don't have it with me tonight. If you can give me an email or someone, I'd be more than happy to send it to you guys. But
Well, it's not our application, I'm just looking, trying to get some information for the board, so.
The bottom line is the state has a lien on the property. They're willing to remove it, but there needs to be a attorney to fulfill the application.
I see. Okay, thank you.
It's a parcel on Monterey, the first vacant lot on the right side, behind Sweet Basin. Also the issue right now is that it's also, has a mortgage on it for more than it's worth, and that person is willing to accept, any proceeds towards the first mortgage. So there's a blanket mortgage that covers it as well. So it's not, no one's not trying to do something, it's just complicated, and I'm sorry. And I thank the town for your
Mr. Chairman,
patience.
Yeah,
what is the
one second.
benefit of, oh, sorry.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes,
What is the benefit of a one-year extension as opposed to just letting them do it over? It sounds like they're not ready for a site plan.
We are.
well, that's why they're here tonight. This would be, they've had 5 extensions starting in, I mean, the application was first heard, as I understand it, in 2014. And starting in 2015, they've had a series of extensions. This now would be a 6th extension, which I think
But my
is
question is,
excessive.
what is the benefit of the extension?
So can I answer that? So the benefit of an extension would be the applicant wouldn't have to go back through the review process and pay the fee for site plan review, the public advertise, they don't pay for it, but we would have to re-advertise the public hearing.
We did that twice. Because I missed the deadline, not knowing the first time it wasn't ready. I had to review the whole review again. So that was done one time before. I think it was the
So-
actual, then there was 6 extensions.
It's not a complicated thing in terms of that. What we asked for and what you granted was a buffer relief between a commercial and a residential zone. And the issue was that basically by agreeing to put up some fencing to help with the buffer, then we met the requirements necessary and you granted us the relief of the buffer. There's not anything about the lot. My understanding, the lot is a buildable size and et cetera. So it's really just, it was buffer relief. So that was what we were asking for the town. And I do believe that this would be the last extension that we would ask for. So I'm confident that we're at a place where we'll get something done. So,
Okay, thank you. If
Thank
you
you.
gentlemen want to take your seats and the board will discuss it.
Mr. Chairman, not that I'm trying to make a thing or anything, but I think we said last time was the last time.
Well, and that's why it was, the opportunity was offered to the applicant to come in and explain, you know, because it is a request, and I think it's, regardless of the fact that it's the 6th request, we should hear it. And I thought that perhaps there might be some additional information offered that could have an impact on how the board felt about granting a 6th extension. But I agree with you, but I guess I'd kind of like to poll the board and see how, Jamie, how would you feel?
I would vote no.
You would vote no?
I did not hear any information
And-
that made me have a comfort level.
Mr. McGowan?
I have to say, I mean, I drive past the property all the time, you know, with, Mr. Fazio is a, you know, as a business owner, I understand things, I'm trying to think of kindness in this, a year, no, 6 months, okay. I'd be happy with a 6-month extension if we're
Okay.
this close.
Mr. D?
We're living in unusual times,
Yes.
okay? And I think we have to take that into consideration. Yes, we said it was the last time, but nobody expected COVID to come in, you know, and hit us the way it did. And I think we better have, for our own image and to show some compassion, I don't mind doing it for another year, but this definitely would be the last time. And I would say this is it because of the extenuating circumstances that have come up in the last year.
Okay. Well, I don't think granting extensions from 2014 is not compassionate.
Well,
But I understand what you're saying.
I'm saying because of the last year, and I know what he's been through, all right?
Okay.
The man's been through a lot. And you gotta take that into consideration. You lose a child,
Yes.
it's a little different.
Chris?
I keep thinking about what the project is, and it's just such a simple project, and because it is a simple project, I don't have a problem giving him the year extension, for all the reasons that were just mentioned.
Can I just ask, when did we last look at the application site for the site plan?
I'm sorry, say that again?
When did we look at, I'm not...
When did we originally look at
Well,
it?
it would've been
2014.
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
So we haven't looked at the site plan since 2014?
Just looking at an extension this
Yeah.
year, so it's just a.
Because it hasn't changed. It was
It
just a
hasn't
bump.
changed.
It's just a buffer, John. It's a fence, nothing else.
I'm a no.
We just granted extension after extension after extension now since 2014.
Maybe we ought to have a show of hands of who was on the board.
Yeah,
After 6 years, it seems to me they just ought to start again.
okay. What do you think? One suggestion was 6 months.
Well, I don't go for that. I don't see that 6 months gonna do anything. Sorry, Brad. But I would look at the 1 year under the condition that it is written into the resolution itself. This is the last request.
Well, I'm not actually sure that we can do that because they're entitled to a request. But I think it certainly will be noted for the record, and I doubt very likely if we were to grant another extension that the applicant would attempt to get a seventh. I mean, no, I understand what you're saying. And to Mr. McGowan's point, it's likely that we expressed the last time, I did not have time to look up the minutes, but it's likely that the last time we heard this, we said it would be the last time. Very likely, so. But I think we have to look at it tonight on its own merit, looking at the history of having granted the 5 years of extensions. Well, why don't we do this? We have a resolution, a draft resolution before us. Let's ask that be read, and we'll just vote on it, see how it goes.
Motion to grant a 1-year extension for site plan 70-2014, James Verano.
I'll second it.
All right, Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Schaefer?
No.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Ms. White?
No.
Mr. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Traver?
No. So that means my math is still accurate. That means that the extension has been granted for 1 year. So I would admonish the parties, if it was not clear the last time, please bear in mind that this will be the final extension on this. And good luck in resolving your issues. And thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Ward.
And thank you for coming in and
Thanks for
explaining it
coming
to
in.
us this evening.
Thank you very much. Hopefully we'll see each other at another opportunity.
Yes, indeed. All right. We also have another item that was somewhat unusual. It's really a technical item. We need to reaffirm the site plan approval for CKT Enterprises that we heard, was it just last month? Last week. I was close. Because of a timing issue with the county planning board. Laura, did you want to comment on that, just the reasoning behind that?
So I'm asking the board to reaffirm their approval resolution due to the county recommendation timing review of the application. The county provided their comment and an NCI comment on September 16th, which was after our meeting date. And we're required to wait for them to provide the recommendation. And
So it's just a timing issue, really.
the timing issue.
No change to the site plan, it stands as approved.
Correct.
We're just going back on the record following the county,
Was there a meeting,
reaffirming our approval.
was there a meeting on the 16th, or was there a letter on the 16th?
Their letter came on the 16th and it's dated the 16th.
But they had no concerns.
Huh?
the county had no concerns.
Correct.
Okay,
No.
We just don't have the letter.
It's just a technicality.
Just wanted
Right.
to make sure.
What was the date of the vote?
There is no vote. Thanks.
Mr. Lamont,
So we have a draft resolution reaffirming that site plan approval. If you could proceed with that, we'll take care of that.
All right, motion to reaffirm approval for resolution and, motion to reaffirm resolution for site plan 37-2020 CKT Enterprises LLC per the draft provided by staff, conditioned upon the following. Do I need to read the whole thing, Laura?
No, you're just
No.
reaffirming the approval.
Right.
Did you say the word of reaffirming the approval?
Yes,
In the beginning,
You did?
yeah, you did.
Okay.
yeah.
you also,
Yes, sir.
second.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded. Is there any comments or questions on the reasoning behind that motion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. White?
yes.
Mr. Trevor?
Yes. We also have, moving to our agenda, we have one item that was on the agenda this evening that is going to be tabled, and that is William and Kathleen Bazzi. And I want to mention to people viewing the public hearing via the YouTube channel, if you were prepared to comment on this application this evening, it's being tabled until November, and we'll be discussing that shortly. But there will be another opportunity to make public comment on this application at that time. This is site plan 41-2020. Laura?
So they're being tabled because the zoning board requested them reevaluate the amount of relief that they're requesting. They felt that the relief for the floor area was too much,
Okay.
and they suggested redesigning the project.
I see. Okay. Any questions on that discussion? They're probably going to be modifying their project and coming back to us.
Well, the question I have is, what's the sequence of presentations? Will they come back here first if they modify the plan, or will they go to the zoning board first?
I will have to wait to see their project.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be based on staff assessment of the project. So the tabling is requested to November 24, and I think we have a draft resolution.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Motion to table site plan 41-2020, William and Kathleen Bosey, to the November 24th meeting of the 2020 Planning Board.
Second.
Oh, with information due by October 15th, 2020.
Seconded again.
And again, the public hearing is open on this application, and we will leave it open pending their return. So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Trevor?
Yes. All right, so now we move to the old business part of our agenda. The first item being Sherwood Acres Construction Site Plan Modification, 35-2020. We heard this under unapproved development last week, and they are back. So, yes, good evening.
Thank you. This is our third meeting on this project. We did appear before you, I think last week, and you did recommend that the variance be granted. We then went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the board did grant the variance without any conditions. I think the only question here is the permeability of the site, and I would tell you or try to point out to you, maybe not in technical terms, that the applicant really has done as much as he could, even though he made a mistake in accommodating neighbors and trying to make the driveway, which serves his property and serves the adjoining properties, more stable. He did extra paving, there's no doubt about that. But he did install a dry well at the bottom of the driveway. If you've been there, you see it. It has excess stormwater capacity storage. He did install a conventional septic system further away from the lake, which required him to actually purchase an easement from an adjoining owner to put a conventional system in, as opposed to the first time we were here, we were talking about doing holding tanks and whatnot. But we were able to get the property next to him and get permission to put a septic system, a conventional septic system on that property. He installed infiltrators to the back of the property, and the roof drains or goes to those infiltrators. And those infiltrators, I'm told, also have excess capacity for what will actually come off the roof if you do the calculations from an engineering point of view. Some of the paving that he did with permeable pavers, and he does get some credit for that, not 100% credit. I think he gets 50% credit for the area that's covered with the pervious pavers. So that's basically what I would give you as an overview. Tom Center is the engineer for the project, and I understand there's a letter from the town's engineer, which I don't understand why they send these projects to the town engineer every time, to be honest with you. On half-acre lots or less than half-acre lots, really it seems like it's overboard. But I'll let Tom address the concerns. He thinks he can address the concerns of the town engineer.
One question that I had was regarding the paving. Did the owner do the paving himself, or did he have a professional do it?
I truthfully, Mr. Traver, don't know that. He doesn't have that type of equipment.
Well,
So,
the letter that we got in the record said that, and I don't want to put that word, but he blamed the contractor for that.
For not following the plans?
Yes.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
And for the sidewalks too, you have to take a look at the sidewalks. He put in, what do you call it, river rock along each side of the sidewalks, which basically are like sink wells for that. Although you don't get credit for that, like you do get credit for the pavers that you put in that are permanent pavers. And if you take a look at the site, and I presume you all been to the site, I think it's a nice project. He did a good job with it. He did a good service to his neighbors as well as to himself, and has made something that used to be in dispute with people on that driveway, and using that going up, no longer an issue between them all. They all get along well. I think we have a letter in your file from Mr. Makoviak, who is the adjoining owner to the, if you're standing looking into the house, to the left. And I don't know if you have something from Mr. Gansel. Mr. Gansel's here? Okay. But he also benefits, both Makoviak and Gansel benefit by what was put in there. I don't know if you're going to read the letter from Mr. Makoviak or not.
That was included in the record?
It was in the record with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
When you open the public hearing, I'll read that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so that.
If you have any, I'll have Tom Center come up, okay? This is not something they taught us in law school.
Nor in planning boards.
On the job training.
So, while you're doing that, I'm going to again remind the public that we do have a public hearing on this application, and if you wish to comment via telephone, the number to call is area code 518-761-8225.
Thank you.
Evening, Tom Center, the engineer of record for this project. I do have to apologize. I didn't realize this was going to the town engineer. Most of these small projects are reviewed at the staff level. We'd already been through that once before. When I was asked about this and working through it with Mr. Brown, we came up and looked at, what was done extra, what do we have for stormwater, what's our stormwater currently based on using minor calculations. When you send it to the town engineer is held to the code, which in 147 requires that it be reviewed to the stormwater design manual, which is actually for 1 acre projects, 1 acre disturbance, or larger. So you got to remember, all those separations are based on having a 1 acre lot and other 1 acre lots on vacant land, and those distances for disturbance and the larger volumes of stormwater going into these different devices. It's really, this is a battle we've had for a long time, how this applies and what we're trying to do to make a project better when we're working on existing non-conforming areas. I believe that, if we had to look at this as the 25-year design storm, which doesn't have prescriptions for infiltration devices like 1.5 gallons per square foot, that we could do this as a HydroCAD model and model the lot so that we don't have any additional runoff coming off the site to the pre-existing. You've seen that in the larger projects that we've always talked about, the pre versus the post. If we have to go in that direction, I believe that this project will meet that standard.
One of the confusions that I think I saw the engineer had was that the plans that they viewed did not seem to match what was there, or the other way around.
I believe what he was looking at, he was looking at the original site
Okay.
plan and the parking area and that area, which at that time, there was not, Mr. Gansel's project encompassed the two of them.
Right.
So that's where the disturbance between those two shared accesses come from.
Gotcha, okay.
So, that's why the plan that we gave you that just shows the hard surface and the additional and what was put in does not have topography grading and all that. But if you've been to the site, you can see that the grading has been improved to direct that runoff like we were asked to the dry well that's down in front of Mr. Burke's parcel on Makoviak's property. And that was to improve the current runoff situation where runoff was shooting down that road and beyond, and would eventually get to the lake, according to Mr. Gansel, who's lived there and experienced the issues that are there. As far as, the other, most of the comments have to deal with stormwater and complying with the stormwater design manual, which I think we'll work through with that, with whether we have to do a model for them and work through those things. And some of those other issues, but if there's any particular concerns with the comments, I can address those.
Okay. Questions, comments from members of the board?
Yes, just, go ahead, John.
Tom, there is a Chazen letter dated September 17th.
Yep.
And I received it yesterday.
Yes.
I'm concerned about the last sentence. It says, "The applicant shall revise the location of the stormwater management practices to demonstrate conformance with NOAA DOH regulations." How substantive is that, and does that alter the site plan?
This is a conversation that we have had. There's some controversy on how DOH looks at these new stormwater design projects, these new stormwater on existing non-conforming lots, whether it's applicable or not. We've gotten this comment on the last 4 jobs, and we are currently working through this.
Did the town engineer have a comment on that?
The town engineer is the one that made these comments. We're trying to find a solution to work with these through this particular.
These are the town engineers.
These is the town engineer.
I can interject here. I did have a conversation with Sean Doty in regards to this particular project. And after we discussed some of the items and the actual design and the materials that were provided, he and I were in agreement that Tom and he could work those details out.
Administratively, the way it works, John, is that, to answer your question directly, if the site plan or the design needs to change as a result of enabling an engineer, town engineer to sign off on it, then that would be a site plan modification, if it were sufficient.
If it were a substantial change.
Yeah.
I think these are some technical questions we have to sort through to find the solution to that.
So revising the stormwater management practices is not a substantive change?
If we had to, we'd have to come back.
I mean, that's what he has to work out.
That's what we have to go through these things, whether we sit down and work on it through a model, as opposed to using the minor calculations.
I'd like to raise the same point I've raised before. 4 of these 5 applicants before us to tonight's meeting had very lengthy and substantive comments and changes. They are all dated September 17th. We got them on yesterday, and they seem to be very substantive comments on the part of the town engineer. So I have the question of whether we as a planning board have the, right or ability to get into these kinds of issues, because typically what happens is the engineer to the applicant or the applicant himself says, oh, there's nothing, we'll work them out with the town engineer.
Well, ultimately, that's their requirement to do that. But to answer your question again administratively, it's up to us to decide whether we have sufficient information regarding the application to move forward, either approve or deny it or process it in whatever way is before us. So if you feel there's inadequate information for you to be comfortable to rely upon the applicant's affirmation that they will work with the town engineer and get the required sign-off versus what the town engineer has stated in their letter, then you can be in favor of tabling the application pending more information. We have started a practice some years ago, actually, where we've had very extensive engineering comments, particularly some of these are obviously of a technical, sometimes even typographical nature. But we've started a practice where if there are very extensive engineering comments, we will send the applicant back to work with the town engineer and ask that they come back when they have a sign-off. That's a judgment we have to make based on the comments that we get on the engineer, and you can certainly advocate that position if that's your sense.
I guess I'm just raising it as a question. I'm not sure what my sense is in this respect.
Well, in this case, I think, as the applicant has offered, I think part of the confusion which impacts on the comments is that the town engineer saw the plans that were approved, not the unapproved plans.
He saw the original, the depiction that we have, basically going for the variance in regards to the hard surface and the issues that Craig asked us to present at the time, was we had additional impervious area that we needed to get a variance for.
Right.
There was no other setbacks. It had to do with more hard surface than was allowed, and we needed that additional variance, which then his determination just before was that we needed site modification, which caused us to come back here. So our avenue was to look at the impervious area, the additional, did we have storage for it, did we have, were we in compliance, and to explain any of the changes that were made in the project. So we really didn't do a full redesign with new topography and as if it were a vacant site and this were a brand new project. We tailored our response to that permeable variance issue.
So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but basically it's up to us to decide whether we have enough information to move forward. And again, it has been a practice on our part occasionally to have applicants work with the engineer, table the application, have them work with the engineer, and come back when they've resolved all these issues.
But most times, we never see it a second time. We usually have the applicant.
Oh, no, they usually will come back and they'll have a sign-off, or they'll have very few comments.
But we've often approved site plans with the assurance on either the part of the applicant or the applicant's engineer that they will work with the town and work them out.
That's correct, yeah, no doubt about it, yeah.
My only point, I guess, is that in every one of these tonight, there was a very substantive letter from Chazy that came only one day before our meeting. And first of all, I'd like to see the road. And secondly, I would think that we as a board should get into them a little more than simply taking the applicant's assurance that they'll work them out. I thought.
Well, I think the decision was made some time ago that we would rely, really we would have to rely on the town engineer to handle the engineering part, and the chore for the applicant and their engineer is to work with the town engineer and report to us that any engineering issues that are outstanding can be resolved. If we don't feel that they can be resolved, or if there's so many of them that our thinking perhaps mounts that it's going to result in a change in the application, or it's going to be such a lengthy process, that's when we would table the application and try to get that worked through. Generally, I think, at least it's been generally my experience, that usually there are differences in interpretation of code, or somebody will say, well, you did a calculation that reflected this, and I think it should be that, and they have to sit down and just kind of work that out. Sometimes site visit and look at the actual site. Generally, those things can be worked out. there's almost never an application, that, in my experience, that's been reviewed by the engineer that doesn't have some comments associated with it. But they're generally ones that are within the scope of the ability of the applicant and the engineer to resolve those issues without major changes to the project. Sure.
Well, I know what you're saying, John, but again, the project, if it's not an engineer sign off, and the project has to come back and work it out. Now, you say you'd like us to get a little more involved with the engineering comment. I don't claim to be an engineer. I read the comments, but I don't know what they mean. All right? So I don't know where I could get involved. I have yet to trust our engineer to do the right thing. And that's why we have that protection in there, that if they don't come to agreement, then it's going to be done.
And this case is unusual because what we originally approved is not what's before us.
Well, and it's unusual too, I think, Steve, in the last sentence. I'm still know the answer to the question as to whether or not if the stormwater management practices are totally changed, whether that change has to be towards, et cetera.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to answer?
No, I have the same problem with not getting these comments on a timely basis, so that you could actually review them, maybe meet before we come here and have this long discussion.
Yeah, that's an issue that we've had for many years, and there are times when it seems to be more timely, and other times when we have these kinds of issues. But regardless, the substance in terms of how confident you are that you can work with the engineer to resolve them, I think that's the main concern here, is that we have questions that we don't know the answer to. I mean, generally, when you have a project, you will come in and represent that you have an answer to all of these. And you know, some of the things, I mean, it drew my attention that the plans did not seem to match what the applicant was looking at, or what the engineer was looking at.
That was because I don't think he had the full set of plans for the variance.
Right, but you understand and that's rare. I mean, usually the engineer has the application that's presented and can do an evaluation. In this case, because there was unapproved development and these various other issues, that raises another issue, an unusual issue for us. That doesn't normally happen. Thank you.
The comment I'd make is that Tom is going to sign off on this as a professional engineer. He is what he's saying. He thinks that there is not a stormwater problem, that he has excess capacity to storage the stormwater between the dry well and these locations. And then he's responsible for that to the applicant and to anybody else affected.
And of course, any approval is conditioned upon having a town engineer sign off on the plan.
The other thing I mentioned is in the last couple of weeks, we've had some pretty good rainstorms, and there has not been any problem with that site or with our property or the adjoining property because of stormwater. I think we're talking about something that's not, these are technical issues based on the fact that he's looking at the standard for 1 acre disturbed lot as opposed to, which is a pre-existing non-conforming lot in and of itself. And what's been done here is practical, and it was probably the best that you can do. I don't know what he meant by relocate this. He's talking about disturbing, go back and disturb the site, and tear up, you know, what has been done. And you think you've seen the site. The site is a very, I think, complete site right now. It seems like we're creating a mountain out of a molehill.
I think part of the point that John brings up, and it's not a matter of the thing valid versus valid, but there's a substance thing there that a board member is tasked with reviewing the material that's before. And I think that there's nobody here who does not take that on. I know weekends are ruined in some cases, knowing that you're coming to a meeting on Tuesday, and the weekend seemed the time to do it. But I know that the last letter that came was dated September 10th, and then we met, and I think that was a Thursday. We were meeting on Tuesday. The date separation is the same for this letter. But the first letter, I read through it. And I'll start off with your comment. I'm not an engineer. But I look at this stuff enough, and you know what to have questions about.
Right.
And you see things, so you raise them. I got to the point, I was reading that last letter for the last meeting, that I called Shauna, didn't get a return response. I called Laura, and she said that she had just, the next day, or the day of the meeting, she said she had talked to her about it. There was a lot in there that concerned me, to be looking at it, to say it was not complete, or there were things hanging out there, to a layman sitting here. That bothered me to be going through that at that late date. Now, I don't know where to say, okay, who is, where does that lie as far as that late date of a letter coming out and then to us to review? Because I think it takes away from us in some manner to sit back and say, I'm not an engineer.
Right, no question, yeah. It's really a disadvantage for the applicant, because again, if we don't have a comfort level with the information that we have before us, we're not gonna be comfortable moving forward.
I didn't have that comfort level last week, and I asked my question more. Should we really be reviewing this thing?
On this same application?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and it was a different application.
This is the first letter on this application, although they've had it.
So, I apologize, so your question was in regards to Clearbrook, and that was a subdivision of last week.
Well, yeah, all right, I know.
Same comment.
Same date, though, yeah.
Some of them are very similar.
Well, the bottom line, I guess, as far as, bottom line for us tonight with regard to this application is if the board does not feel comfortable moving forward, you can make a motion or suggest that it be tabled. That's the bottom line. I mean, we're either gonna move forward on it, or we send it back and have the applicant work with the engineer and clarify any items of concern that we have. I mean, that's the option that we have.
Well, I'll say, I'm not uncomfortable with the application, but I look at the paragraphs and the phrases that are, and wording that's used in there, that in some cases you're looking at it and saying, well, okay, you want to, not you guys, but the engineer, he wants to change, or something should be looked at, or something should be clarified, or I don't have enough. Those are the things that trigger to get, I think, where John is.
Yeah, yeah. And we usually will ask an applicant, if we have those kinds of questions, if they feel confident that they can get a sign on it. And they usually will work to do that often before they even come to our meeting. Feel confident they review these things. Now, granted, they normally have more time. So that's an issue for the applicant as well as us. We normally, and one of the main responsibilities that Laura and her office have is making sure that an application is complete before it gets to us. But this is obviously outside of the planning office, the town engineer, and when that information comes in late, there's nothing really, as far as this evening, that can be done about that, other than saying we just don't feel comfortable moving forward. And that's a decision that we have to make as a board.
I've never really heard an engineer say, I'm not comfortable with getting signed off, and all these years, so.
Well, there's been times where if there was something with a separation requirement on stormwater and we haven't been able to work it out with the engineer, then we have taken it through the variance process. Because if we're gonna hold the stormwater design manual to the nth degree on the small, non-conforming lots, and we can't work out something that the engineer, if we can't do a different device, if we can't line a pond so you don't have infiltration, you get more infiltration over here, you basically move stormwater numbers around on a site to make a model work, versus this was a minor project that just talked about volumes. I would be doing a model which would incorporate lawns in the entire site. Then we'd have to come back for a variance from the stormwater design manual, which we did on the kitchen project way back when.
Yep.
Where you had it, and you couldn't come to an agreement. There was also some strong issues in the neighborhood that forced our hands, with the water keeper and everybody else, to actually make those changes and had to come back for a variance.
Right.
So that's the process. If we don't agree, it comes back to everybody.
So, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure, of course.
Tom, the third page of Chazen's letter, the top, actually, there's a half a page of text there.
Yeah.
Talking about-
That comment has been coming on the last 4 projects. That's something that Laura, I've talked to Laura about, I think she's talked to Sean about, and
Well, it has to do with 50-foot separation distances.
correct.
And accordingly, he says, shall be revised, the infiltration.
I would,
What is your sense of that being worked out?
that we need to look at what he's talking, where he's talking about with the permeable pavers. Because we've looked at that before where DOH has said it's permeable pavers to them, it's a pervious surface. It's like as if it were grass, as if someone were parking on grass.
How does that deal with the 50-foot separation distances?
Because he's talking about stormwater recharge, which is the storage volume that's underneath that permeable paver. He's calling that stormwater recharge. This is, again, we continue to go back and forth between a design manual that's meant for very large areas and a large volume versus trying to do the right thing on a site to get stormwater, green infiltration practices, trying to take impervious surfaces closer to the, getting them to perk in the ground closer to where they're actually created so you're not moving sediment and stormwater around. These are the things that we as a group with staff and the town engineer and us as engineers need to put our heads together and say, where are we at with these and can we come into agreement? Is it apply?
These permeable pavers have actual stone underneath them, crushed stone. And underneath that, you've got the Glen Lake gravel, which is very porous. So, whatever you get on this, I think what I said before, they've had some substantial storms since all this was done, and nothing has occurred that would indicate that the site isn't handling on-site the stormwater that it receives.
The dry well per se that we located for the road, that we put it in the best possible location. And these are the conversations, he wasn't involved in the conversations on the first go around. So we need to discuss those things that, hey, we were solving a local problem that would have been worse for those wells, and we found a solution at the planning board level where we came between neighbors. Those neighbors know that it's there. That hasn't become an issue with any neighbors. So I think those are the things that two engineers sit down along with staff and say, where are we at with these things that are in the technical nature, is, how are we working this out?
Mr.
You understand?
Yes.
Just, we seem to be going around and around and around the same thing, so, not that I want to interrupt, but, I mean, overall, above and beyond what you did on the property, what you've done to, outside, to help the neighbors and the stormwater, for the road and everything, I think is admirable, and like I said, it turned out to be a lot. But one of the things I want to say on the engineer is also, there's been a lot of times that we look for that engineer sign-off, and usually...
It's a requirement.
Yeah, and what the engineer will say, I feel comfortable with these, and I can actually say after all the years I've been on, I've never, unless they've come back with a modification to the site plan, they've usually worked it all out. And being comfortable with our local engineers that say, because their business drives on, protecting their clients too. So, I mean, I have all the faith if Tom Center says, these things we can work out, I believe, wholeheartedly, he is meaning that, and I trust that with knowing his engineering firm along with working with our engineering firm. So, I mean, I feel comfortable, with that. The timing of some of these, yes, I know this has been a problem in the past of getting them. It's a lot. We're trying to move quick. We're coming out of COVID. We have a list going on. I think Laura has done a phenomenal job keeping these applications coming in. We're getting out, relatively easy. I mean, so it's a lot of give and take, and you're right, some weekends are eaten up. A lot of evenings are, caught with your head on the kitchen table, just taking a little cat nap there, keep going, but,
Well, and there have been occasions where the engineering comments have made us feel that we needed to have the applicant work directly with the engineer and come back.
That's
It
true.
doesn't happen all the time, but it's not unheard of. I didn't feel that this rose to that level, but, people have to feel comfortable. sounds like you feel
I
comfortable.
feel comfortable, yeah.
How do board members feel? Do you feel that we have enough information to move forward?
I read it as a disagreement in definition.
Yeah, and that seems to happen
You know,
all the
yeah.
time.
Happens all the time.
It happens all the time.
Engineers in town.
Yeah.
I've heard more than once from a lot of engineers.
Laura, the public hearing is still open. Is there the written comment?
There is written comment. So this is from David Deeb. Below are my comments in support of the subject application. I am one of the 3 property owners that share use of the private road, Glen Hall Drive, right of way in the vicinity of 3 Glen Hall Drive. 1, the additional hard surfacing in the parking area is providing access to the new parking spot at 5 Glen Drive, adjacent Gansel property. If grass was used in this location, there would eventually be only dirt remaining from the driving and turning on the grass strip while parking at the new spot at 5 Glen Hall Drive. Number 2, the decrease of site permeability will easily be mitigated by the new dry well previously installed under this project. This dry well is a condition for approval of the site plan for 3 Glen Hall Drive. The dry well was located on my property or was recommended by the engineer of record in order to maximize the amount of water collected. In the past, the stormwater eventually found its way into Glen Lake during heavy rainfalls. This is thank you, Ronald Makoviak at 9 Glen Hall Drive.
Any others?
No, that's it, but I believe Mr. Gansel's in the audience,
Oh,
the
yes,
other
sir.
neighbor.
My name's Bernie Gansel. Me and my wife Candace live at 5 Glen Hall Drive. That's the adjacent property. We have shared driveway access with 3 Glen Hall Drive. Both driveways were paved at the same time, and Danny leveled it all out, so all the drainage on the top of both lots goes to the back, away from the lake, goes to the back of that, and then down the driveway into the driveway. I'd just like to say that we support any variances that would allow the current driveway configuration to remain unchanged. Since the driveways were paved this spring, all the water runoff from the top of both lots has been directed away from the lake into the new parking area, into the new water tank. I would also like to discuss the adding of the green space between the 2 parking areas. I would oppose this for 3 reasons. No green space currently provides a single paved area to allow cars from both residences to turn around and drive forward down the shared right-of-way. Without that ability, we have to back up 150 feet down before we can turn around and pull out onto Hall Drive. We did that for 4 years. It's very difficult, and at night with no light, it's very difficult. There's a lot of big trees there. Secondly, adding a green area separating the area would create a maintenance problem. It would create a mud hole during heavy rains. And then parking at Glen Hall Drive is very tight, and removing even a few square feet of the parking area would make parking even tighter than it already is.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wants to address the planning board on this application? Not seeing anyone. I haven't gotten any phone calls, not even from Brad this evening. So we'll close the public hearing. How do board members feel? Heard the public comment. We certainly discussed the engineering. Feel comfortable moving forward? Okay. We have a draft resolution, I believe. This is secret type 2, so no secret action is required. I think I just closed the public hearing. Must be, I think it's very little tonight. So, this is ready to do that.
Motion to approve site plan modification green project 2020. Shirley Acres Construction. Further draft provided by staff conditions on the file. 1, ready to request again. 2, the approval of jobs and 1 year continuous approval. Applicant is responsible for requesting an extension of approval within the 1 year time limit expired if the applicant adheres to the items outlined in follow for the second resolution, including items A through G.
I'll second it.
We have an approval motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Just for the record, I want to make it clear that I raised those points not necessarily on the project. I think it's a good project. But I was raising it primarily for the timing and the process that we're using on these engineering comments.
Understood.
And I obviously know the reputation of the applicant's representatives, and I thought they answered the questions well, and so I'm a yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. River?
Yes. You're all set. Do you want these extra? All right. Next on our agenda, we move to new business, and the first item is Hudson Headwaters Health Network, site plan modification 38-2020. Laura?
Okay, so this applicant is modifying an existing building on a previous approval for a site plan. The building is 3,750 square feet. This was the storage building. It's being modified or upgraded to allow for storage of 2 RV units. And so there's now a new access point if you look on Cary Road. And there's a wastewater system that is not, it's its own wastewater system for the removal for the RV units versus a building septic system connected to the municipal supply.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Board. My name is Jamie Easton. I'm with MJ Engineering. This board saw this project previously December or January of last year. We did have engineering comments, but we satisfied those previously with Jason, working internally. And if you notice, nothing really changed on the site plan. Sometimes it's just for the board, just for me working in lots of different communities, just for them to understand. Typically, engineering comments I receive can vary from the day before to maybe 3 to 4 days on average before an application is heard. So that's very common to see that from the TDE portion, that we receive comments back. But typically, a lot of the comments are technical in nature. Sometimes it's just calculation changes, things like that. But again, it's so minor on stuff that most of the time the engineers, we work it all out together. So originally, before COVID, this building right there that I'm highlighting was going to be a storage building, because the building to the north, or the top of the page, was going to be all changed to office. They kind of had storage there. Hudson Headwaters was going to put storage down in this building and use it as 2 garage bays. That's what you approved originally. Then COVID hit. The model of having the ability to reach the public in different fashions and different ways came out. And one of those was basically with 2 RVs, having a mobile ability to reach out to people, whether that's testing at remote sites or going to people's homes or whatever it happens to be. So this was a direct result of COVID related. Hudson Headwaters has purchased 2 RVs, and they'd like to store them instead of being outside. As with all RVs, you know, there is a waste product that is generated, or you have water and sewer that is contained inside, and we want to get rid of that. Well, on the previous approved plans, we had this facility had a leach field in the back. We upgraded it to a grinder pump to connect to the existing town municipal sewer system. That's currently being installed right now. So what we have is a very simple waste pit that if you ever driven a motor home, you go out, there's a waste pit connection that you are able to connect onto. Via gravity, it will then flow to the grinder pump and take it away to the town system. So that's what it's used for. Frequency of this, I could see this driveway, even though it's a large amount of asphalt there, this driveway is basically, I'd say being used once or twice a week. I would not estimate anything over those. It's not going to be a high frequency driveway entrance in and out. So that's really why we're back here, why we had approved plans, had them all done, and went through, and why Hudson Headwaters is only currently right now putting in the grinder pump for all their buildings. They wanted to pause this project because they wanted to build everything all together after COVID hit, and the goal is really to start this in the springtime upon the planning board grant approval. At this point, I'll turn over to the planning board and see if they have any general questions about this project.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Questions, comments from members of the board?
Well, the lighting plan doesn't clearly identify the lighting fixtures on the building, just as a comment. Can you clarify that?
Cut sheets for the lighting fixtures, I think.
We'll have to coordinate with the MEP engineer if there is a, I'll say light that can be there, but it'd be more for building codes if a light is required there. We're not lighting up that driveway entrance for parking, like a parking lot or whatever. So I would envision a light being very similar to what you have between your two garage doors or a single garage door for New York State building code requirements, but it's not going to be lit up all the time, like a parking lot.
There's gonna be lights on the building?
No, not from anything that's changed from the previous approved plans, no.
I'm sure you'll have lights over the garage doors, downlight, and over any of the exit doors on the side of the building.
Per New York
I
State
can
building.
see, your lighting for that, I would predict.
Yeah, so the lighting at the doorway entries and things like that is driven by New York State building code. Whatever, we can reach out to the MEP and provide those cut sheets, what those built.
If you can provide those to Laura.
We have no problem, but we refer to it from the civil side of site lighting as, what is it gonna look like? What's the photometrics? Is there any light spillage over the property as a result of those light fixtures, like lighting up a parking lot? We're not proposing anything with that driveway entry point that we've already previously approved.
You did give us a photometric, but you just didn't give us the cut sheets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's easy enough, yeah. 'Cause I don't remember on
It's on C11.
C11.
We do have a public hearing on this application. Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to address the planning board? I'll remind, let me find my number here. I'll remind folks that are observing us on the town YouTube channel that if they wish to comment by phone, again, the number to call is area code 518-761-8225. Laura, are there any written comments?
There are no written comments.
Other questions,
Yeah, I
comments?
mean, the main concern I had is the additional curb cut, but he totally addressed that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just not a concern at all. And it was even a minor concern because it's a side road anyway. If it was, Corinth Road.
Every curb cut is kind of
something
a
different.
question mark. Okay, well, I'm not getting any phone calls, so we'll close the public hearing on this application. This is under secra, this is type 2. I guess if there are no other questions or concerns, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve site plan modification 38-2020, Hudson Headwaters Health Network. According to the draft resolution prepared by staff with the following. 1, no waivers requested. 2, the approval is valid for 1 year from the date of approval. Applicant is responsible for requesting an extension of an approval before the 1-year time frame has expired if the applicant has not yet applied for a building permit or commenced significant site work. 3, adherence to the items outlined in the follow-up letter sent in this resolution, including items A through K and L, lighting cut sheets to be submitted to town planning staff.
I'll second the motion.
We have an approval motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. You're all set. You want these plans back? No. Next, under new business, we have also Hudson Headwaters Health Network application site plan 39-2020. Laura?
So this application is discussing 6 properties where 2 properties will maintain their existing buildings One of those properties is the medical office building, which is, its parcel is 309.7-1-58. This is an existing medical office building. They're including 30 spaces, and as a note, the project includes merging all 6 properties.
Okay, thank you. Hello again.
Hello, good evening, Board. Jamie Easton with MJ Engineering. Yes, the description of what was just discussed is pretty clear in the sense of there is Hudson Headwaters Health Network owns the 6 parcels, that surround this block, and their goal, currently one building is already taken down on it, 2 other buildings they wish to take down, and then remove some of the scrub brush and vegetation while keeping some of the large specimen trees on the site. And that's what our goal is, to remove those, that impervious area, and then add parking on one side of it and help prevent a little bit of drainage that they have right now. Currently, off of, I believe it's Columbia Street right here, Stromer shoots across that wooded yard, and there's a dumpster enclosure sitting right near their entryway, and that causes some problems for them because it kind of just weeps across. So we just added one catch basin in there directly underneath the apron, so it's a little bit more contained at that location. In this project, we're actually reducing down the overall impervious area by 25%. That's just the stormwater, it's a stormwater requirement. This project, even though we're not building much, because we are disturbing a lot, we will be getting a stormwater permit from the DEC for this project. That was kind of outlined in the comment response from Chasing, and they wanted, even though we reduced down the impervious area, and that was one of the comments, was the amount of stormwater was less, they wanted me to model that existing pond, which is fine by me. I can just run the HydroCAD or the HydroFlow model and run that and show that it's taking a lot less pavement off the area or impervious area. It's all going there, so it should be less water there. So they just want to prove that. So that's all. Very simple project.
Questions, comments from members of the board? Okay.
I noticed on the site development data, page 3, you didn't put in the proposed setbacks. You put question marks.
What page was that?
Page 3 of the application.
I think the reason, I think we left it as, let's see, on the application.
The actual application.
Yeah, so I have application for both projects, and
oh yeah.
There, that one is.
Well, then fill out the existing.
I think the reason why we kept, I think two reasons why I think we had a question was, one is there's no new buildings, so there's no proposed, and the problem is also we're merging all the lots.
Right.
So depending on how you look at it, this is they're all fronts now, so everything is a front yard. So there's looking at that, I think we were confused on at least that portion of it.
I just thought we should have had it. I mean, to me, it's an incomplete application if you don't have that. I don't have a problem with any of those setbacks. I'm sure you meet them all, but just for the record, I think it should be
complete.
Should be complete. And usually I don't even catch that stuff, but you kind of jumped at me. Probably because you put the question marks. And then the only other comment I had is on, I'd like to see a couple street trees. We do have general requirements for a street tree within every 100 feet of a linear street. And you do give us a landscape plan on C7, but particularly along Southwestern Avenue, it seems like there's plenty of room to put in a couple of street trees, and maybe on Nathan Street as well.
Okay. So some of the larger, I'll call it specimen trees that are certainly on Southwestern, we're not touching.
Right. Yep.
We're adding these three because most of the stuff in here from our landscape architect is mostly diseased and everything else. So I could definitely see adding, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 on Columbia Street.
that's certainly fine. And if you want that wrapped onto, was it Holland, or Holden, along this way too. We plan on keeping these two, there's two specimen trees out here, and there's one or two within this green area. But certainly we could wrap it up around the corner if that's a requirement, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, I was looking more at, I mean, if you're gonna offer that, that's great. I was looking more at Southwestern Avenue.
Okay.
Maybe between the two buildings, put one or two trees, and then on Nathan Street.
Okay. I mean, I certainly, I'm not objecting to trees. I mean, we could fill in, like I said, on Southwestern, most of those existing trees are there. And I'll talk to my landscape architect to spread those out accordingly and add more of a streetscape for that that's more of the main thoroughfare through there.
Right. If they weren't shown on the plan, I was assuming that there weren't gonna be new ones,
And if we're gonna add that as a condition, we should be specific in terms of numbers and locations.
So you show 3 new ones along your parking area.
Yes.
My suggestion would be same size tree, 2 additional trees on Southwestern Avenue, and 2 additional trees on Nathan Street.
Okay. I have no objection to that.
I didn't see a problem with the Holden Avenue personally, but I mean, if you want to put more there, that'd be fine. And part of where I'm coming from is there seems to be a lot of trees that were taken off, not necessarily in your property, but in the general area.
Yeah.
Both sides of Southwestern Avenue in the last couple of years. It's just kind of obvious.
You have anything else? Other questions, comments? I'll remind the audience for the public hearing, if you wish to comment by phone, that number again is area code 518-761-8225. And just note that we have not received any calls as of yet. Laura, are there any written comments?
There's one written comment, and I think you're in the process of addressing that. So this individual, Julia Kuhn, wrote to me, "Thank you for taking the time to talk to me and explain things to me today. We live at 10 Nathan Street, directly across from where Hudson Headwaters and Health Network would like to put a parking lot. We are happy to have them in the neighborhood. The only concern we have is privacy. My husband recently had a massive stroke, and our granddaughter, who we care for after school, has autism. Both have noise issues. Neither one tolerates extra noise from traffic or loud voices. We'd like to see a fence or something put up to block some of that out. Thank you for considering this, Julie and Arthur Kuhn." And so they're at Nathan Street, and he mentioned 2 additional trees, and I don't know whether there's discussion in regards to more vegetation on that side or a fence. I don't, up to the board.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Any further discussion regarding vegetation? I think Chris's suggestion of the addition of the trees would certainly help. The more trees we have, the better.
I guess the only question for the board is, would you rather see a conifer, an evergreen along those roads versus a deciduous tree along that Nathan, especially for that time?
For that site, I think I kind of like deciduous. I don't know how people feel, or a mix.
Maybe a mix would be something to discuss, because that would minimize some of the noise at a lower level.
Yes.
Well, two additional deciduous and then 2 additional conifer.
Works for me.
So you'd end up with 8 trees total.
People comfortable with that? Have not received any calls. We've taken a written comment. There's no one in the audience that wanted to address the planning board, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Under seeker, this is a type 2, so we need not take any seeker action. If there are no other questions for the applicant, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve site plan 39-2020, Hudson Headwaters Health Network. According to the draft resolution prepared by staff with the following. 1, no waivers requested. 2, the approval is valid for 1 year from the date of approval Applicant is responsible for requesting an extension of approval before the one-year time frame has expired if the applicant has not yet applied for a building permit or commenced significant site work. 3, adherence to the items outlined in the follow-up letter sent with this resolution, including items A through K and L, setback requirements to be listed on the site data plan sheet. M, street trees to be added, 2 street trees, deciduous trees to be added on of 2 to 2.5 to 3 inch caliber on let's see, Nathan Street and Southwestern Avenue, and 2 additional conifer
Evergreen.
trees to be added on Southwestern and Nathan Avenue. And 2 additional, what was the last one? We had one more?
No, I think you're good.
Did I get it all?
I think you got it. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
I just can,
Yes.
I guess with the conifers, knowing that they would block sound more so than deciduous is gonna lose leaves at some point. Could you locate those on the map in front of the Coon property where that request came from?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm throwing it up to you guys too.
Yeah, that seems like a good
Yeah.
idea.
Coons property?
It's right on the corner there,
It should be on the corner.
Okay, the corner.
yeah, which would be the southeast corner.
Okay, I have no problem doing that.
Do I need to amend the?
No.
Jamie puts it on the,
Yeah.
No, that's good.
I'll just add it to the plan. and Staff can review it.
Any other comments, questions? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Hunsinger,
Yes.
McGowan,
Yes.
Valentine,
yes.
Kadeem,
Yes.
Benoit,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes. You're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have, also under new business, Adirondack Imaging, Site Plan 40-2020. Laura?
This applicant proposes an 18,200 square foot medical office building. This is an imaging center. The lot is located in the Cary Industrial Park and is a corner lot, so that it has frontage on.
You did. That's okay. That's okay. You did.
That's all right.
All right, Laura, could you start over, please?
Sure. So this applicant proposes to construct an 18,200 square foot medical office building. This includes an imaging center. The lot is located in the Cary Industrial Park and is a corner lot. Access to the site will be from Cary Road, but will have frontage on Cary and Corinth Roads. The building has the imaging center is approximately 15,000 square feet, and a lease tenant for the future could be 3,200 square feet. The site work include installation of the parking area, landscaping, stormwater management, and lighting.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Matt Brobson with GLA Group. I'm joined this evening by Rabia, and your last name? Nation. Thank you. From Hyman Hayes Associates, Larry Novick from Benasha Construction, who'll be constructing the project, Jim Combs from Adirondack Imaging, and Kevin Knobloch as well from Bonaccio. I prepared a presentation, going to run through some items, get you familiar with the project, and then we'll field questions at the end. I did want to modify one of the things that Laura read. She did read the imaging center to be 15,000 square feet. The imaging portion of the building is 9,850 square feet with a lease parcel, or with a lease area of 4,250 square feet. And then there's a future lease area of 3,200 square feet, totaling the 18,200 square feet. So just some small adjustments, and we'll look at that on the plans as well. And go from there. Go to the next slide, please. Okay. The project is located on the corner of Corinth and Cary Road. It's located within that commercial light industrial zone. It's the previously lot 20 of the Northern Distributing parcel subdivision here.
right adjacent and across Cary Road from Hudson Headwaters facility here, medical facility. And we'd be looking to come in with our entrance, which is in another slide, directly across from the existing driveway entrance off of Cary Road. There'll be no new entrance on Corinth. All access will come off of Cary Road for this project. This project is also located along Glens Falls Transit bus line, Route 7, and there appears to be a bus stop in this location just off of the property with a shelter. There's one thing that was noted in some of the staff comments, and I did notice it out there. I wanted to point it out on this slide. So this is the survey parcel, or the survey for the parcel. You can see it's currently, the majority of it is wooded. There are some trails that run through this parcel, roughly 2.87 acres. And you can see in this slide the entrance off of Cary Road for the adjacent parcel. To the south, there is a self-storage facility that you saw in the aerial. That's that. The majority of this parcel would be cleared of any larger trees for the development. This is identifying those areas. All these plans are plans that were created and reviewed by the engineer. We can go over the engineer's comments and review. Again, you guys have touched on the timeliness of the comments and those things earlier. I'm not sure we need to get too much into this. All of our entrance for construction will be coming off of Cary Road, nothing coming off of Corinth. There is some existing stub utilities that were planned for during the construction of the subdivision, and I'll show you where they're located so we can connect to those with our proposed building and connection. So this is the general layout of the site. The building is set back off the road with the parking in front along Corinth. The main entrance would come off of Cary, and you'd be driving in and directed to the main area for drop-off. There'd be a small canopy off the front of the building. Not a traditional pull-off area for drop-off. It is a imaging center, not necessarily a surgery center or something like a medical office for treatment. It is mainly for imaging, so a lot less needing to stop, help somebody out, that kind of thing. We did locate the handicap spots adjacent to the main entrance with a crosswalk, identifying that as an area to slow down for people within the vehicles. You can see here, this area is the main part of the building, which comprises the roughly 15,000 square feet, which is divided into those two parcels, or those two lease areas within the building. This portion of the building would be the imaging center, with this being a lease area. This darker area that you see here would be a future lease, possible lease tenant for that building. When entering the site, you would drop off or circulate around. This parking lot here would be mainly staff parking, and we've utilized porous pavement in this area along the parking, along the car areas, not within the drive aisle, to minimize our disturbance and grading in that area. We've included in this plan, you can see the monument sign. One of the comments had to do with the distance off the road, the 25 feet off the road, which complies with the corridor zoning for that. Any of the future signage would need to come back and get approved, I believe, through the building department. Yeah, let's go through a standard permit for that. One key feature for this site really is this area here off the western portion of the building. Within inside the building, this is an area where they have a waiting room for imaging, for specifically women's health imaging. Might be an area where they might be in a gowned waiting area, waiting to go into a procedure. So we've decided, or we've tried to assist in some of the calming natures that we can add, and added a garden you can look out onto, while still maintaining some privacy. So there's a privacy fence there along with some heavier vegetation to kind of block the views in while providing some areas for visual appeal from inside out. We've also located, I can touch back on some of the stormwater impacts and how we're treating that on another slide. There's a couple of exits out of the building, and the walk does kind of loop back, which is noticeable, and you typically think it would be in a straight line. The reason for that, and I can just explain it, is there is some MRI equipment and imaging equipment in there that requires some setback for any pedestrians outside the building. So that's the reason for the swooping nature of that walk. We tried to identify and locate the transformer for electrical transformers out towards Perry Road, which is typical for what's going on out there, not uncommon, and try and plant around it to try and not highlight it, but kind of make it go right. What are your comments about street trees? We have introduced street trees along Perry Road, and the landscaping plan is really something that we try to put some emphasis on around the building to make this look very clean at the time. The next slide is basically just the basic plan that we submitted to the engineer for review. But one thing it does have on here that doesn't have on the other plan that I showed you is the fire department movement within the facility and how they get around the site and out. Procedures, something I didn't mention on the previous slide. Here's the dumpster, next to the dumpster pad over here. This area again, this is the portion of the parking lot that would be storage pavement. You can kind of see this walk on the back of the site here. There is proposed to be 93 parking spaces for the project, roughly 1 to 200 square feet, which is something that the client has recommended. Just the nature of the business having a little bit more than is typical, what is required. So that's something we're asking for. We tried to mitigate that by adding some of these parking spots to porous pavement as well. We understand that. Next slide talks about the grading of the site. Really, we tried to set the building up high and bring everything out away from the main door. And really, the concept is here is to have this dry stream bed that runs around the site and would be depicted with some river stones in the bottom and would fill up during the storm events what would remain dry. Also, enhance that feature by adding in some plants that would be kind of more naturalized and native looking, so that you might see your stream beds, kind of soften that look, trying to really get away from large basins that just fill up with water and stand water. So we're doing a lot of infiltration on this site, expanding and allow for infiltration basins as well as pavement. So the infiltration portion of the basins is down this way. Next slide. This is the utility connections that I spoke of earlier. There's an existing stubbed sanitary connection that is here, which we'd be connecting with a E1 grinder pump, which is the standard that the DOH and that the town has requested that we use for pumping the waste to that point.
No, planning board. It is. I'm sorry, say that again? Okay, hang on one second. Excuse me, we have a caller who's stating that on the YouTube channel, the volume is insufficient. they have their TV set or whatever, computer turned up to 100. Don't know, is it possible that you can raise the audio level on the transmission?
It's a normal problem with that. We get static from time to time, it happens to get when we go down. Earlier this evening, it was crystal clear.
Okay.
We got static. It was-
Yeah, our YouTube technician is saying that we do have some interference from time to time, but they're doing the best they can. You're welcome. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Do watch.
What's that?
People do watch.
Hey,
Yeah.
there you go. It's good to know they're out there
Thank you,
watching, right?
thank you for calling in.
Yeah, you never know. So the sanitary would be pumping up to an existing force main that's on Corinth. We've been directed to use this E1 pump to pump the sewer, and we've been directed by the town as to what items to use and how to make the connection, which we have included in our design. There's an existing water stub connection, which we'll be connecting to here and bringing into facility for the water needs that there will be. Again, no new connections or crossings to a main. Everything has been stubbed as part of the subdivision, so nothing new for us to do but to connect to what's there. Go to the next slide. The next slide is really going to be the landscaping plan, and I think you're going to see we've kind of tried to plant this in a way that kind of is a little bit more attractive and adds to some of the stream-like features that you would see. These areas in here are going to be the stone riverbed areas. Now they're only going to be depressions 2 to 3 feet with stone in the bottom, but we're going to plant around the edges and grade them such that they look kind of natural, and the plants would be native and something you might find there. It also provides this area that we would be able to snow plow off into without impacting any of our stormwater as well. So those areas are beneficial for the site. So that's located in this area here. Again, I'm going to touch on the outdoor garden that's kind of hidden behind a screening fence, and the reasons for that. We did enhance a lot of the plantings along the front of the building, bring in some flowering trees and things that kind of set that area up nicely. Along the back, we've tried to add some plantings, so we are taking down quite a bit of that screening to the neighbor. We are tight to this area with some restrictions from some of those machines in the back, as well as some stormwater facilities that are underground that you don't see, a dry well and some other connecting drainways that are servicing for our stormwater in these areas. We have provided some sod along this edging to kind of give you that instant growth to kind of stop the erosion during construction when that does get put in, to kind of help with that immediate need. You can see we've tried to plant around this transformer to kind of block it from interior, probably more than exterior, but they do need access to those facilities, so we are cognizant of that. We did do some base plantings around the bottom of the monument sign just to kind of bump up that as well, and continued a lot of this plantings, so you don't just see a sea of lawn to stormwater facility. On the next slide is the lighting plan. The lighting did incorporate building lights that we spoke of earlier, that was a comment earlier. One of the comments the town had needed some information as far as the average foot candle of the parking lot. I got that today and I can provide it to the town, but it's 1.3 foot candles within the parking lot area, which they recommend around 1. And then 5 at the building entrances, and the measured is 5.9 at the building entrances. So we're right on target of where the town wants us to be with our lighting for this. On the next slide, we're going to kind of get into some of the architecturals. This is where you'll see this divide in the building. This is the portion that is the imaging center that I spoke of, and this is the lease area as part of this plan. This is the future lease area for a future tenant. 200 square feet footprint. Off in front of this, you see the canopy area as well. Kind of in this area to kind of provide some protection to cover when entering the building. require some additional space back there for the pedestrians. And then on this side, you do have that gowned waiting room that I spoke of earlier. On the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Rabia to kind of walk through the elevations and describe the materials as well.
Okay. You can wipe off the microphone.
It's like a hot commodity.
Hi. Good evening.
I'm Rabia Shanation. Like Matt said, I'm the project manager from Hyman Hayes, so we're the architects on the project working with Matt and everybody. So just in terms of the overall design, so I'll be the one to talk about the building, and if you have any questions, just please feel free to ask me. But in terms of the overall appearance of the building, so the primary tenant, as it was mentioned earlier, is Adirondack Radiology Associates. So they were keen on kind of keeping that presence that they have in the community and making sure that they're kind of alluding to this connection to the Adirondacks and around. So that idea of the kind of more earthy tones that you see. So in terms of like the colors that you'd have on the building, we're trying to stick to more of a neutral palette. The main building material that we would have is ephes, but then there would be some areas at the base for fiber cement accent panels, and then some cultured stone that would be utilized in certain key areas, like at the entry and the side of the building that faces west. So we gave a little bit more attention to certain areas of the building that have a little bit more interest, but in general, the building is kind of trying to keep more of a neutral, earthy. The scale of the building kind of responds to the community and the height of the building. So in terms of glazing, Matt was talking about the layout of the space on the inside. So there's kind of how the inside responds to the outside is that there's kind of a separation from public to a semi-private to a more private zone. So that's where you see at the front there's going to be a little bit more glazing because those are the more public spaces at the entry vestibule and also at the waiting area for Adirondack Radiology. So we're trying to provide those looks, views to the outside, connection to nature, and actually West Mountain is kind of to the northwest there, so we're kind of trying to highlight with the ribbon window there to bring that kind of outdoor connection to the inside and bring this natural inside to the building. So in general, the idea is to kind of have kind of an Adirondack feel, but in a more modern sense, kind of alluding to more of the high-tech nature of the equipment that's happening, and the procedures that are within the building itself. Do you have any questions about the building itself?
Questions, comments from members of the board?
I like the colors.
Yeah, I do too.
I
That
really
was
like it.
beautiful design.
Good looking
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
It's calming.
Very nice.
Yeah. I think it'll be
Calming.
I don't know if this is time, but you still have more.
No, I'm all set. This was the couple more.
And then there's a rendering as well, just to kind of give you a sense of what it would look like.
I was gonna ask you about the rear elevation, so I remembered what the use was on the other side.
Do you have any prospective tenants?
Adirondack Imaging Adirondack Radiology is the main tenant, but I don't know if there's another tenant on
So
the
that, you know, so you have no idea what you're going there, because I'm wondering what kind of traffic it'll generate once you lease the
Well,
building.
the parking numbers are calculated to the full 18,000 square feet. Yeah, but they're figuring, you know.
Okay.
I just thought I'd throw that in there to mess you
I
up.
appreciate it.
Did I do a good job?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and open a public hearing on this application and just remind the public observing us on the YouTube channel that if they wish to comment, they could call area code 518-761-8225. Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to comment on this application to the board tonight? Not seeing any hands. Laura, are there any written comments?
No written comments.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Yes.
Yeah, I had a couple questions.
All right.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
I've seen some modern medical buildings that have been up closer to the road with the parking in the back. What drove the location of the building in this case?
Yeah, so in this case, we're really taking cues from the corridor district, having this building set back further. With the building, the site is not really that deep. If we were to put the building closer, we would lose a lot of that parking wrapping around the site and include stormwater. Really did this to try and minimize our disturbance, keep our, it appears as though we've disturbed quite a bit, and we have, but we've really tried to tuck it in and be understanding of what's going on adjacent to us as well. Putting it to the front would present this faux front on the road. You'd really be looking at the back of the building. This provides the front door to the people driving in, as well as people entering off of Cary. So you present it to the front door. You see the front door as you're passing by, and the parking that is there. So that's really the reason it's back, to show the front door as you're passing by and bring you to it.
Are you familiar with the one in Delmar?
I'm not.
The medical building in Delmar. It's set right on the corner of a major intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And they've designed it very well so it looks good from both directions with the parking in the back. I mean, it works extremely well, and I was just curious why you went to the back in this case.
Yeah, the setbacks here are like 75 feet for the building. So getting a building at that point would really close off our use. The remaining area wouldn't be sufficient enough to get the parking around it. I don't think it would provide that up on the corner feeling that you're talking about, just because the setback is what it is in that area.
Yeah, I thought the same, I was thinking about that, but the back of that building is, like I said, because there's self-storage units to the back side, that I think I would take advantage of moving the building back to the self-storage units myself.
Move the parking to the back, you mean?
No, I think the way it is now is good because of the fact of the
Oh, right,
self-storage.
okay.
Yeah.
I did misspoke. It's not 75 feet in the front setback, it's 50. But I still think you wouldn't get that up on the street feeling that you were talking about.
One of our concerns is light pollution, and I know that your lighting specs are a bit high. Can you tone them down a little bit?
Yeah, we can definitely look at, adjusting that to be less intense. If you're looking to be right around that 1, to lower it down to that, we can definitely work
and the
with
5 at the entrance?
Yeah, we can definitely work with the lighting engineers on those items. Sure.
Yeah, you had one spot on your photometric plan that was like 12, and I figured it was just the anomaly of the model that you ran.
Okay, yeah, I'd have to look and see where that is, but.
Right under the main entrance.
Yeah, there are some lights underneath that canopy area to kind of.
I mean, right next to it was 5, but it was just that one spot.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely look at that and adjust that.
The only other question I don't want to speak for the board, but could you comment on the parking? Because only 61 spaces are required and you proposed 95. You did comment that that's what the tenant wanted to have.
Yep.
But if you could just elaborate for us.
Yeah, really looking to have, this facility would have a higher turnover. And just providing those spaces allows us to accommodate that turnover, as well as the facility, the lease areas that are proposed. The tenants that might be in there could possibly require also a higher volume of turnover, and that would kind of help with that. So that's the reason for that.
Are you saying that there may be a need for more spaces to accommodate the future leases?
No, not beyond this plan, no.
I'm wondering, because I had the same thought, Chris, that knowing that the full 18,000 square feet was taken care of with 60 spaces,
right,
is I'm wondering if it wouldn't pay to just, I don't know, if you consider even banking some of those parking spaces now and just adding them as asphalt paving if they become necessary later on when the 2 other spaces are leased.
That is something we can look at. If we were to do that, I would suggest banking the ones that are on the curved sides of those parking area.
Sure.
I would like to keep the stormwater intact with keeping the porous pavement on, in that rear end. That is one area that where we could come back, once we discuss it, and if we decide to bank that area, that might be a possibility as well.
You had made, Matt, throughout the presentation, sandy soils, sandy soils, sandy soils. Are there any tests done, or is that just there?
Yeah, we did do deep hole test pits out there to generate our stormwater design, and that was submitted to Chase, and they did have comments on that. Some of them, they did want to have some additional test pits done in certain areas, which is common, and something we could definitely accommodate before we start construction in those areas.
That surprised me a little, because your test pit data was pretty uniform.
Yeah, well, that's just it. I mean,
pretty common soil through there.
120
sand,
inches.
sand.
Yeah, it's not changing. I mean,
It's all sand.
They do have requirements. The DEC does require certain test pits within a certain number of square feet if you're certain in these infiltration areas. And until we finalize the design, we just don't know where those areas are going to fall entirely.
The length of the lateral for a force main, for the pump, is that, I don't know, I don't remember setting them for residential, so I'm not used to it. So that seemed long on there. Is that a normal length?
Well, it's not normal. It's longer, but it is calculated with the E1 pump for the head that's generated. So that can be modified to pump to that. We also have to connect to an existing force main on Corinth, so there needs to be some pressure. Some pressure.
I noticed you're clearing every square inch of the lot. Did you consider leaving some of those mature trees in the corners, for example?
We did, and if we can minimize that as we get out there, I think some of the coverage you're seeing is, if we can save some of those large specimen trees in some areas as we get out there, we definitely will try and do that. We didn't have a pinpoint location of all those, and that would have been, a 3-acre site to pinpoint the larger trees on the outskirts might have been a difficult task. But some of these areas for sure, like up around Corinth, where we're not doing so much grading, we could definitely maintain some of those trees, and as well as even some of the areas on the south and on the eastern border, we can definitely try and maintain some of those.
Great, thank you.
It's a shame that you talked about taking out the curbs in the parking lot. That was what kind of caught me. It was calming. Calming.
I heard you that time.
I like that, and along with the planning and that, and the riverbed, like I said, I kind of like that design, and that, to me, didn't hesitate me at all at letting you, saying anything about moving the building up front. I really like the design of what you did to that parking lot. I'm a full believer, sometimes our parking lots are too large, and if we could, cut back a little and bank, but a lot of times I believe some of the ones that we have banked ended up being used, and you guys actually know more of what you need, and this and that. So, but I think the way the planning and everything is, and that curve, it's so soft, it doesn't look like there's that many spaces there. And adding the permeable pavement over there, the permeable pavement over, I like the idea of where you park the cars. Well, I have found out the turning radiuses really eat it up and spit it out. So, but I like the idea of the way you've done your storm and for the snow removal. I feel you've done a nice job with the colors and the building layout, and it really was a nice, it was a pretty nice project to go through tonight, and some nice slides, so thank you.
Let's see, is there anyone in the audience? I guess I asked already. There's no one in the audience that wanted to comment on this application. I have received no additional phone calls. There are no written comments, Laura? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing then. Under SECRA, this is unlisted action. So I would ask the board, having reviewed the materials, if there's a sense that there are any environmental concerns after review of those items that we need to review in detail. Are we ready to move forward with SECRA? I think we have a draft motion.
Motion to grant a negative declaration for site plan 40-2020 Adirondack Imaging as per the resolution prepared by staff. 1, Part 2 of the short EAF has been reviewed and completed by the planning board.
I'll second it.
We have a secret resolution made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunzinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes?
Ms. White?
Yes.
Kramer?
Yes. All right, are we, people comfortable moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. We have a-
The only thing I want to ask, there are, I think you mentioned, but it was the previous tenant on the, or application was on the, his engineering comments, but they're lengthy, they don't look, there's more questions than anything else, but do you have any problem with addressing all these with our engineer?
No, and, I'm gonna sound like everybody else up here. No, we did take the time to prepare comment responses. We did not provide them because we were waiting to see if there's any other comments this evening. We do have comments, responses ready for Chase, and they'll go out tomorrow. None of them would modify our design, and a lot of those were items for clarification on their part, or some small adjustments to inverts and soil types, things like that. So nothing is going to affect our design or change it drastically from what you see today. And we're definitely confident we can get to that resolution with them.
Thank you.
Any other comments before we move to a resolution?
I'm going to add, there's 3 more items we added to the resolution. I want to make sure we're all in agreement with them. First one was the lighting specifications are going to be lowered to meet town recommendations.
Yeah.
You offered that, yeah.
2 partial parking spaces. I don't know how many. You want to list the number of parking spaces to be banked?
They were proposing 95 and the code is 61.
You want to bank so many of them. You know how many on the bank?
That's a type of a thing that I guess, I don't know if we really want to specify ourselves in the site plan, because we become designing the plan.
Then we just leave it generic.
Yes,
Parking
but perhaps
spaces
at
be
least
banked
that
at future
the applicant acknowledges that it will be looked at as far as trying to maintain more green by eliminating unnecessary parking spaces and banking them for future use. Did you get that verbatim?
I got it.
Okay.
They also committed to try to keep any mature trees that.
That was my next one.
All right.
I didn't know if you wanted.
All on the same page.
Which trees that you want to put on there? You got certain trees that you want to list on there? I just put down certain trees to be maintained on the property.
Well, I think.
Well, we suggested the
I
ones
think the
along the
corners.
edges. Yeah.
Yeah, we could definitely look at maintaining as many of those that are possible along the borders to the south and on the east.
On the southern border and where else? In the
Eastern
corners?
border.
South and east.
Southern and eastern border. And how about the corners? You said the corners also?
Yeah, really the corners that wouldn't be developed, on the western south corner, we have the transformer for the electrical, and the other corner is going to need to be cleared for turning distances on Corinth and Cary, but the other 2 corners will be covered in that area,
Okay.
in what we described.
Yeah, they're part of
I'm
the
gonna
south
have,
and east. Well, they're part of
northern corner?
They're part of the south and east.
It's part of that northern corner is also part of the eastern property boundary.
I'm just gonna leave it then, southern border and
Yeah,
eastern
you're
border.
good.
All right. Motion to approve site plan 40-2020 Adirondack Imaging, according to the draft resolution prepared by staff with the following. 1, no waivers requested. 2, the approval is valid for 1 year from the date of approval. The applicant is responsible for requesting an extension of approval before the 1-year time frame has expired if the applicant has not yet applied for a building permit or commenced significant site work. 3, adherence to the items outlined in the follows letter sent with this resolution, including items A through K. Also L, lighting specifications to be lower to town recommendations. M, parking spaces to be banked for future tenants acknowledged by the applicant. N, trees to be maintained on the property on the southwestern border and the eastern border.
Second.
We have a approval motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Raver?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Nice
Would you like
project.
these extra plans?
Yeah, really nice.
No, thank you.
Sure?
We got plenty
By
of,
the time we put these in, in our waste, it's gonna cost,
Yeah,
the trees they're so heavy.
I know.
And I do agree with being in the back.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Steve, before we, can I make a quick announcement just on the census, just a reminder?
Yeah, we're not finished yet. We still have to talk about.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, all right, at the end. That's right.
So that concludes our regular agenda, although recall that we have to discuss the referral to the town board for review and comment on the established renewable energy systems and facilities regulations. I know, Mike Dixon, you had, I thought it was an excellent comment you wanted to make. If you want to bring that forward. It was regarding the retiring of the.
You could come up to the mic and please state your name.
Thanks, Brad. Oh, so what I had noticed in there, we didn't have a clear definition of active use. So specific to the solar farm. So if we had a solar farm that became non-compliant as far as, I don't have my notes in front of me, I've got them in back. Let me think here, just.
It had to do with decommissioning, and you were suggesting that there be some guidelines for how to make a technical determination if the solar farm or part of it was failing. And I think one suggestion you made was the energy output generated versus when the panels are new.
Correct. Yeah, so, let's see. So a better definition of what active and continuous service were. So in the definition page, trying to define what active and continuous service is and tie that in with output, some sort of language in there so we don't end up with a zombie farm.
Right.
Or a zombie solar array in the future, much like the zombie telephone poles that we have, zombie homes that we have.
And we don't have to be specific about how to define that engineering determination. We really are just expressing our concern that the town board address it as part of the code.
Yeah.
And they would have, they could reach out to the engineers, or the proposals could make those specifications that then they would be held to.
Right. Ultimately, my concern would be that we would have somebody that would define, or they would take advantage of a loophole and keep one solar array operating, even though you've got an entire solar farm.
Right.
And they would say it's active. In our eyes, it would not be active, and we would like it to be decommissioned.
Yeah, the decommissioning was one of the concerns that I had. I think it's important that the town make some type of determination as to how to define at what point is that solar panel or panels, need to be decommissioned, and that there should be something in there that says that they'll be removed and some restoration of the property done, because as you say, you don't want to have these zombie panels, and they do have some environmentally toxic components as well, so they do need to be dismantled and recycled or destroyed.
Yeah, and I think the town code did they did a nice job defining as far as if it's inactive, that the land has to be returned to its natural use.
Right.
Or natural state. Just getting there. I don't think we did a great job defining that pathway, as well as, again, going back to defining what is truly active.
Yep.
Well, could we base that on, nothing lasts forever? So you start off, you go online, you're producing, 100% of what you should be. And then over time, as they wear and they get older, that percentage drops, and then it becomes to a point where we're not making any money, and we have too much of a farm. So maybe that's where we need to determine when maybe a percentage of production hits a certain point where we, what you don't want to happen is it goes so long that they actually have lost so much money and now they just kind of vanish. And then we're stuck with, and that's what we're trying to prevent, is it?
Yeah, I think tying it in with, again, if output, again, starts off at 100% and whether the town determines is it 75%, 50%, what is acceptable before we consider it at a state where it needs to be decommissioned or brought back up to its full potential again?
I mean, would that be an easier way of putting it? It would be a percentage of output compared to...
Well, we don't.
Well, I think that's what he's
That's something
suggesting.
that would
Well,
have-
yeah, I mean, that's how I perceive it in my mind is when it gets to a certain point where it's not producing, where the company that put it in is starting to say, well, this is not really doing what we want. This is when we want to be able to say, okay, well, you need to bring it up or remove it.
I guess my concern is I don't want to give the company that installs it power that they don't have. I think the power needs to be retained by the town. And I don't know, I mean, certainly a percentage of effective generation would seem like a very logical number, but my experience with this technology is that what seems straightforward and logarithmic isn't always the case.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm concerned that we, as a planning board, not make a determination as to what the parameters should be as to when the panels are old or when it's, when it needs to be decommissioned, only that it should be. And a determination should be made and that should be added to the code. So there's some kind of a standard that everybody would have to adhere to. And I'm sure that information is out there that the experts would be able to provide. It could be age, it could be a visual appearance. I've seen some that they begin to visually deteriorate, and that's a symbol. So I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's important that it be in there for all the points that you raised.
So would it be a suggestion to include Mr. Dixon's recommendation with a little modification to that within the recommendations that I've suggested? I don't know what letter.
Yeah.
But that way, it's part of your recommendation to the board that you want to make sure that the code has some language in it for this matter.
Yeah.
You would add that into your list as L?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where I ended up.
Thank you.
Yeah, it would be.
So as you can see from the material, and I trust that everybody's had an opportunity to study it in the extra time that we had, you can see that Laura added some excellent comments, as did Michael. I didn't know if anyone else had any additional comments that we wanted Laura to include in our...
Well, I didn't quite understand a couple of Laura's comments. The first one, the panels for a rooftop building mounted limited 12 feet in height. I thought it was pretty clear that they can't exceed the height limit for whatever code they're in, if they're on your rooftop. I wasn't sure what your comment was there, Laura.
The standard panel is approximately 12 feet in height. However, in the code, sorry.
Standard, no, I can hear you, I just wanted to see you.
So however, in the particular topic of rooftop, it doesn't specifically identify a 12-foot panel length, so you could have...
Panel length? Panels aren't 12 feet
Panel
long.
width, or I don't know, panel in depth.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of wordage, so...
Like I said, I thought it was clear. I wasn't sure what your comment was.
So I want to know if they want to maintain that the panel, what happens if they've designed a panel that's 20 feet, and granted it doesn't go over 40 feet in a zone, but it's now 20 feet wide.
Well, the actual solar panels themselves are a standard size. I mean,
For now, they are.
For now.
at least everyone that
That's
I've
what
ever seen, even the biggest commercial installations are, I don't know, like this. They're and they weigh like 20 pounds, they're super light.
But that might change at
It
some
might
point
change,
down the road, right?
Yeah,
So that's
so,
why I'm wondering if.
so now I understand what your question, because I mean, I read this, it says rooftop and building mounted solar collectors must comply with the maximum height restriction in the associated zone district. So I thought that was real clear, that, hey, if you're putting solar panels on your house, and the code is 28-foot roof height, and your panels are gonna raise it above 28 feet, you can't do it.
Correct,
Yeah, okay.
correct.
But you're talking about the length of the panels themselves?
Yes, because in every other instance in this code, it talks about specifically that panel width or height.
Oh, I thought it was talking about the height of the, now in the freestanding ones, it's talking about the height of the construction from the ground. Can't be more than 12 feet.
That's what I was thinking.
That's how I read it.
Yeah, but you gotta remember, like,
thought it
say
was
they're on a
really
peaked
clear.
roof, to me, to be the height, you know, would be going up the roof. I mean, I can't foresee anybody putting a ground mounted on top of their roof unless they wanna follow the sun from morning to evening, you know.
And they may very well at some point.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
that's
the
what I
concern.
thought, that 12 foot, that they wouldn't put that if they weren't able to get that on the ground, so.
I didn't even connect 12 feet with a roof mounted.
Yeah, I didn't either. That's why I was asking the question.
But if they do, suppose they do put a roof mounted, if they can put a roof mounted on the ceiling, on the roof, really, the height can't exceed the peak of the roof,
Right,
Right.
period.
right,
And that's gotta be within code.
yeah. Yep.
Any other
Well,
suggestions?
I had two sort of questions, comments. Laura, have you been involved with the discussion?
No, I have not. This
Okay,
is
'cause-
the first time I looked.
Yeah, so the question I have is, so I have solar panels on my house with, you know, photovoltaic solar panels. My next door neighbor has solar thermal panels for their hot water. My thermovoltaic panels fill the whole roof. And it was only expected to generate 80% of the power that we use. And at the time, and they've been up there 3 or 4 years, the company that installed them could not legally install more than they could justify. You know, they had to look at our electric utility records in order to size the
Yeah, they typically
panels.
do that.
And they couldn't put on more than what we use by,
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it goes
regulation.
back to the grid.
yeah.
Yeah.
My neighbor that has the solar thermal systems, I don't think it's the size of 2 tables. I mean, they're not very big for
Well, that just
hot
heats water, right?
So my question is, I'm not sure that we need to have a full acre of land for a ground-mounted freestanding solar thermal system, because they're not that big. So that was why I was asking if you'd been involved. I don't know what the reasoning or logic was behind that.
Right, so I think that's a good question, only because it generates additional work between this board and the zoning board.
Yeah,
And I think it's definitely a good suggestion to them to evaluate that with that specific description, is that if 2 panels is sufficient for a half, I apologize, I don't know what the acreage lot is, then why would we require them to have 1 acre?
yeah, right.
It could be just to limit the number of them.
Maybe, yeah.
It could be.
And they also
They're not
look different. They also look different. You know, they don't, like, you know, when we think of solar panels, I think we think of the photovoltaic, because that's what you see the most. But
Right.
the thermal solar panels, they look different. They're not as reflective generally.
Right, they're black. 'cause they've
Yeah,
gotta
they're
heat the
usually
water.
black, and they absorb
Yeah, they
heat
just
instead of
absorb the heat
reflect.
and-
Yeah.
And
It's passive solar.
Right. And then the other question I had is on the, and I understand the logic for the discussion that we started with, the posting of the bond. And I remember, it's in the code that we can do it for site plan, that we can require that the developer post a bond. And there's really only been a couple of times where we've really had a serious discussion about that. And I know in the one instance, and we had counsel here at the meeting when we were sort of trying to hash that out. And the comments that were being made is that it's either very expensive or you actually can't get it. So I'm not sure, I mean, I understand where it's coming from, but in here, it's an absolute requirement that be done on any solar farms.
I think one of the reasons for that is because it's a...
But I wonder if it's even possible, is why I raised the question. I'm sorry, Steve.
Well, it can be done by a letter, it doesn't have to be cash. I mean, we remember we
Right.
did that with the diner. They put up a bond letter
Did they?
about the road. Remember, they didn't want to build the road because the...
I know we didn't get a bond.
We got like a letter of credit or something like that because, and that would pay for the road that before the diner came along, the land was restricted, so that if any further development took place, you had to build the road, right? So then the diner came and they said, well, we don't need the road, and it's like $800,000 or something, so we're gonna lose this project if you have to put in the road. So the solution was, you put in a letter of credit, or whatever the technical term would be, that the money would be there and the road would be built should there be any further development. And they did that. And that's one of the reasons.
That's not what this language says.
So maybe the
This says,
suggestion is...
will require the posting of a removal bond.
And I think part of the other reason behind that is because of the decommissioning, and also because it's a relatively young industry and there's so many players that there are a number of potential installers, if you will, that may go out of business.
I don't disagree with any of that. I'm just asking if it's even possible. And
So I think maybe
if you're a new company coming into town and, you know, I don't know what you need to do to get a bond posted.
Exactly. So I think there should be a suggestion included in this recommendation back that indicates more detail needs to be provided about the bond for decommissioning, for project completion, so that it's clear to the deciding board, whether that be the town board, the planning board, the zoning board, how they can use the bond.
Right.
How is it used?
How do you get it?
How do you get it? How do you use it? So that the project is completed or the project is decommissioned and no one's at a loss for dollars and cents, and we have a finished product that is sort of like a mining reclamation.
I mean, I'm familiar with performance bonds in construction projects where you have a AAA rated construction company, they go to the bank and for a point, they get a performance bond that they can, you know, pledge on the project.
Yeah.
You know, but if
You
you're
can
just
buy
a
insurance.
company, if you're just a company doing business,
Yeah, but this is not.
can you walk into the bank and get a performance bond on a decommissioning of a solar farm? I just don't know.
So what it says here, the planning board shall, as a condition of approval, require the posting of a removal bond of a solar farms or solar power plants equipment. In lieu of a removal bond, the town board in its discretion may permit the owner or the operator to enter a decommissioning agreement with the town, which provides in relevant part.
Why is there the mixing of two different boards
Yeah.
in there? That was a question I
That's
got in that
part of
phrase.
the issue.
Why is it saying the planning board should do it and then the town board is?
Right.
Yeah. So
Well, of course, they want us to be the bad guy.
No, I'm serious. Maybe
We should
they
get
made a mistake.
clarification on
Maybe it
that.
was just
Right.
a mistake and left the word town board in it. It should be planning board.
One of the ways it can be done is by purchasing, it's actually a form of insurance. For example, we have a fundraiser every year where we have a hole-in-one contest. If you get a hole-in-one, you get like $1 million or something. And we buy an insurance policy. I think the last time it was like $800. And the insurance is in the event that somebody gets a hole-in-one. I'm not going to be able to do it. But, you know, with our luck, somebody gets, and then we got to come up with $1 million. So you buy an insurance policy.
For
Says if by
$800?
any chance somebody does it, the insurance policy will pay the $1 million.
Wow.
So it could be possibly something like, there's an incredible variety of mechanisms for doing this kind of thing. But you're right, it should be, you know, it should be worked out and determined, you know, what the various options are to ensure that we're not requiring the impossible.
Right, spell it out, make it clear, so.
Right.
No, but a
And I'm sure that
performance
can be done.
bond on a $184 million project is gonna be buco dineros. But a removal bond to remove this, you know, might be a 40 or 50,000, which are much more affordable bond for a company to, in our protection, which goes in, you know, along.
So one of the things I just remembered on our solar panels, I don't know what we paid to have them installed, but written into our agreement is if we have to have them removed for any reason, they'll remove them for $500.
I've seen
Like if you
that
had to
on
have
on
your
the house
roof
removals, yeah.
replaced or something?
Yeah, if there's some issue where they have to remove the panels, they'll remove them for $500. It was written right into our original agreement. And I remember thinking at the time, boy, that's like nothing, you know? But of course, that's not disposal of the panels.
Right.
That's just taking them off.
Do we have time to go through and whether we have questions on a page-by-page basis? Because
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're here for.
well, I'd like to go page by page. It would take us through, if we can.
Sure.
All right. If you don't mind, I'd like to look in the definition section. And page 2 starts off with, now these definitions are actually what is going to be going into this local law, right? So these definitions, are they, do you know, are these new definitions? Are they added somewhere?
These are new definitions that do not exist in the code at this time.
Okay. Under collective solar, I just said, why not add apartment complexes in there? Because the type of residential uses that they're talking about here, talking about the collectives, they leave out that.
Well, they're saying similar collective arrangements.
Well, why not just add apartment complexes and then leave that other phrase at the end?
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Yep.
Yeah, good one.
I'll give you a Valentine one here. Under glare, it needs a period at the end of the sentence. Okay.
Good eye.
Yes, okay. I had a question on permit granting authority. The bottom of page 2, the definition goes on the next side. Town's building inspector and zoning administrator are together charged with granting permits for the installation and operation of solar energy system. And this is what I put comma, following proper review and approval by the town's planning board and/or zoning board of appeals. I didn't want to, my thought was don't leave that hanging and say it's only the building inspector and zoning administrator involved.
They execute it, but we approve it.
Yeah.
Can I just say that it's only for certain projects? It's not for every renewable energy project that's listed. Remember, the planning board is only charged to looking at the ground-mounted operations. Now, you're never gonna look at a roof-mounted unless,
No, but you will have solar farms around here, as they will come before the planning board, and they will not come in residential districts, they're gonna come in other residential districts. So that is a use that we will be reviewing for special use permit and for site plan review.
Yep.
All right, next one, under qualified solar installers, it says a person, and I just put or business. It could be an individual person that does some type of installations here, or you could be, you know, an Apex or something like that. That's just, now the one that, coming down to solar access, this has been a problem. This and the subject with it in Saratoga Springs, coming up to lawsuit and counter lawsuit with the construction of this parking garage at the city center. Space open to the sun and clear of overhangs or shade, and then I put and shadows, because that was the whole premise of the lawsuit with that.
Right.
What's it, Mouton, some restaurant there, where the city center with their garage went up, and they had solar panels on the house or the restaurant there, and the 5 stories there blocked sun view, sun, and created shadows. Again, I'm just putting these down as suggestions.
Yeah, oh, good.
I think it's different from shade, but it's the same thing, but shadows, but shade would maybe, you look at it and say shade with a tree. These are
Right.
And that goes to my next point, next page. An easement recorded pursuant to New York real property law for the purpose which is to secure the right to receive sunlight across real property or improvements thereon. And that would be the building that would be adjacent.
Anything else on page 4?
I don't think so. I had something else, but it's nothing. Next page is just a wording type thing under C4. It says solar collectors, unless they are part of a solar farm, shall be permitted only to provide power for use by owners, lessees, tenants, residents, or other occupants. Now, solar farms are not permitted in residential districts. So the reference to tenants, non-residential tenants, maybe it meant, but tenants and residents. And I'm just saying, am I reading this right? Because of the fact that it has that in there saying, oh, unless part of a solar farm. But a solar farm is not allowed in a residential district. So,
Well, the other interesting thing too is, and this talks about the powers for use by the occupants, but none of the power that's generated is used by the occupants. It goes on the grid, but the occupant gets a lower rate or something, I
Well,
guess.
you get a net meter.
yeah, it defines it in here.
Yeah, because one of the things that environmentalists in California were upset about when the power failures happened is they still had no power.
Right.
Even though they paid for all the solar stuff. 'Cause they weren't connected to the solar panel.
Right.
Oh, that was interesting. So that language should be looked at.
And that's in state law too, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how they meant that wording. I didn't know when they put that unless part of a solar farm,
You can unhook from the grid, and then you can store the energy.
If you get batteries or something, right?
Yeah, but if you're connected to the grid, you have to get a net meter. And basically the way it works is when your solar panels generate power, your meter goes backwards. And then when you use power, your meter goes forward. That's why it's called a net meter.
Yeah, interesting.
And then once a year, the utility company settles with you. If you have a positive balance, they pay you for the wholesale cost of the power that you gave them.
Interesting.
Yeah. They pay you like 3 cents a kilowatt hour.
And you've had your system now for what, 2 or 3 years, you said?
Oh, 4 or 5.
Really?
Yeah.
Would you do it again?
I would if they still had the same tax credits.
Okay. Yeah.
And the same incentives. Yes.
Interesting.
I would. It was worth it for that. But it's a long-term investment.
Yeah, oh yeah,
If you
yeah, it's
think
like
you're gonna-
30 years or something,
If you
right?
think you're gonna make money like right away, you won't.
Right.
Bottom of page 5, the last one, number 3, I just had a movement of phrasing again. Freestanding and/or ground-mounted solar energy systems shall be permitted in all zoning districts, subject to site plan approval by the planning board and the issuance of a solar energy system building permit. The only reason I say to change that.
One comes before the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I thought that not all ground-mounted systems were permitted in all zoning.
But ground-mounted, it says it is.
Yeah.
They are.
If you have an acre.
Yeah.
In residential.
Oh, that's the acre, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, and it's just the solar farms that are not allowed in all.
Yeah, oh, there it is on number
Yeah.
4.
Right. 4, back all the way down to 2.
So I guess your same comment would apply at the top of page 6, where it should be an order of
Yes.
approval.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
That makes sense to me.
Absolutely.
And I didn't know, down at the bottom, F2, this is just a question as we're going alongside, and it says solar farms are exempt from the setback requirement. And I was saying, okay, why?
Yeah, I had the same question.
Mm.
So that's in my notes too.
I was looking at that one from a different perspective, is we're allowing it for 1 acre, if you're doing 75-foot setbacks, comes from all sides.
Right.
You're talking 150 feet and 150, and you're talking a lot of amount of square footage off of a 1 acre lot.
Yeah.
If you have a home, there's no way to ever do a freestanding, you'd always have to look for variance.
Yep. But I didn't know why, okay, so why are solar farms exempt from 75 feet? When a solar farm is really gonna be larger than a 1 acre lot.
They could certainly account for
Right.
it.
Right.
When I look at my house as an example, I'm on exactly 1 acre. And I've got a northern side facing south. I could probably put a ground mounted array there, which I would prefer over a roof mount. It's just my OCD, having something on the roof that I can't get to, can't maintain. But, you know, it would be shielded on the north side, so the neighbors would never see it. So there's a potential that I could do something.
Mm-hmm.
But going by the community council law would be, again, have to go in front of the planning board and add the design, and I'd never be able to get that done.
Okay, let's see. Oh. On page 10, under solar farms, on the last item, number 6, and I just, let me read that, and then I remember what my question was. The average height of a solar panel array shall not exceed 12 feet. However, the planning board shall have the discretion to permit this. And I said, well, what happened to the zoning board? If somebody's establishing a height, then that would be appealed to the zoning.
Be a variance.
Right.
Typically, but if the town board grants it the discretion to the planning board, then you're no different than the
Yeah, but why,
landscape codes.
why would we want it?
Why do you want to review ground, either any of them?
Yeah, all right. But I just put that down. Why should the planning board have something that would be a ZBA?
Right.
Can we back up to page 7, item 5? It may just be semantics, but item 5, the last sentence in that, the proposed screening shall not, however, interfere with the normal operation of solar collectors. Does it need to say anything regarding adjacent properties if they have solar collectors? Or is that just semantics?
No, because I think that comes into that issue we were talking about shading,
Yeah, right.
shadows, and they also talk about an easement in there.
Yeah.
So that you don't create that. So I don't think it's semantics, no.
And you
So what do you want to say?
Say, or ask them to discuss and review this because of neighboring properties, not just the property that the project is occurring on.
Correct.
Okay.
It shouldn't impact the adjacent property.
Going back again on page 11, and I think I may have asked this one, pointed it out already when Chris said it before. Page 11, number 9, and that goes back to, it says, which shall be reviewed and approved by the town board. And I'm wondering why that wouldn't be the planning board.
Yeah. I bet that was an oversight.
See, down below
Yeah,
it says,
I think that's a typo.
in D, and down in D at the bottom of that
Right.
page, the second
Also
sentence
says town
also
board.
says the town board. And both of them are dealing with decommissioning, so I didn't know.
And that relates to the bond question that we
Yeah.
discussed.
Yeah. And then, let's see. If we go to the tables at the end, the use tables,
Yep.
let's see. When we get to the whole premises is going to be solar farms. So we get to, under the residential uses, solar farm, it's an allowed by special use permit in the land conservation district and nothing else. And the next, not the next page, but, let's see, 2 pages after, solar farm, special use permit in commercial like industrial and also in the heavy industrial. And it just says solar farms. So, but I thought that the local law had stated that they were going to list these, the tables were gonna change for,
So you need to add, so that's in my notes, that they need to add the ground mounted.
yes, yes,
Solar as a use in the residential table.
right,
It's not there yet.
right.
Anything else?
I'm all set with mine.
Anybody else have any other comments, suggestions? So Laura, you have your notes and all the work that you've already put into this. Are you going to create a document for us to review and process, or are you going to be able to just give that to the town board as a?
Just did that, I amend this, add the comments that were discussed tonight, and just highlight the items just clarify some of the items that, Chris had questions on.
Yep.
And specifically the bond issue.
So it doesn't need to be in the form of a resolution, I guess, is what I'm saying. Okay.
Well, they're looking for
You
one.
don't need a resolution, but you can identify a document to be prepared by staff and forwarded to the town board in some sense. Is it a positive, and I don't know, is it considered a positive recommendation that you want to see these codes in there with some review of some specific items identified?
Should we give them recommendation and wait?
Well, they asked for one.
Well, they're gonna make a
We
decision.
can still wait until you present this to them.
Well, it's
My
going before the town
recommendation
board
would be to
Monday.
clarify these items. I mean, I don't know that I
don't wanna
can
make a
just
recommendation
leave it
without-
blank and just say,
Well, I would say we would, we recommend to the town board favorable, subject to clarification of the items in the,
but what if they clarify and say, well, we disagree, we're not going to.
Because they have that right.
Yeah, they could do
Yeah.
that. It's their-
yeah, they could always do that.
Yeah, but I mean, we wouldn't want to give a positive recommendation that way then, right? I mean, if we
And
give,
it'll be war.
yeah, let's do it. So,
Well, do you think that any of these things that we talked about, if they said, hey, the heck with you guys on that, is there anything here that, is there anything?
Yeah,
here-
they're kind of nitpicky, a lot of them.
Yeah.
I think with the exception of the bond, because that could be an absolute deal killer.
Right.
yeah,
And maybe that's the intention, I don't know.
Yeah.
So they're potentially holding a public hearing on Monday, September 28th. I don't
Yeah.
know if the decision would be made at that time, but I do know I would like to have, this information put together so they have it prior to their.
Yes.
public
okay,
Yeah,
all right,
right.
And we could commission Brad to attend the meeting on the 28th
there you go.
on our behalf.
Put on my war paint.
Yeah.
All right, so, do we have a draft resolution?
What the? Yeah, I got a draft.
Okay,
It's nothing what we talked about.
Yes, he wants to draft.
Well, that's why I said, I mean, Laura's gonna prepare the
yeah, she's
the
going to.
document and
All right,
just
so
say,
I'll say.
favorable, subject to clarification of the
Favorable.
items contained in the
Just a resolution.
staff report to be delivered to the town board.
That works.
I think he's looking.
Is that okay?
Is that fair, Laura?
Yeah.
Does he have that resolution?
There is a resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Right.
working on it.
Okay.
Motion for.
I mean, I certainly think it's a step in the right direction to have the local law.
Yeah, it's better than nothing,
Law
that's for
amending
sure.
town,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's, thinking that we shouldn't have this.
Yeah,
We all-
right.
but we
Oh,
want
no,
it
we
to
need
be-
it.
Yeah.
Gotta have
Do
it.
you, as chairman, do you want to read what Laura submits to them before? I mean,
I'm sure she'll share it with all of us. I mean, I'm certainly aware of the comments and, what we talked about tonight, and I read the material that she put together already. So,
I mean, can I just interject? So this is what it's adding to your duties as a board member is that you're gonna end up reviewing these items.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
in some instances, currently, the solar, maybe Marie can correct me, is a permit, the building permit, correct?
The ground mounted is, right?
Yeah, so it's not subject to this.
Roof mounted is.
It's not subject to this review by the court.
Yeah.
So this is a new duty that's added to your existing site plan review. So, I mean, if you
And special
think
use
that is something that really should be happening at the building and code department, and I'm not saying I agree with that, but you could say that. I mean, this is adding to your workload.
But what we're looking at, though, would be the solar farms.
No,
that
you're
are in
looking
those
at,
districts.
you're looking at freestanding or ground-mounted solar energy systems and solar.
All right, but that goes to the point that it's not in the use
It's
table
not in the use
yet.
tables yet, so.
How many ground-mounted systems exist in the town right now?
One on Haviland. I'm kidding, that's the one that started this whole thing.
yeah,
Right.
Ground mount.
that's the one that's like a foot off the property.
I'm aware of,
Right, 14 feet.
Yeah.
well, counting that one, I'm aware of 3.
Where are those?
Another one is the Bay Ridge Fire Department.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And then the third is,
Over on Luzerne and the other,
No, there's another one up on Quaker Road across from Subaru there. It's changed
that's the
hands
ground
with
mounted.
the,
That's
rec-
right.
rec
That's right.
It's
place.
a ground mounted.
yeah.
and then one of my neighbors on Route 149 has one.
Yeah.
My wife's.
Actually, going out
My
Ridge,
mother-in-law's
there's
cousin.
one too.
What's
Going
that?
on Ridge on the right-hand side when you go.
And there's other small ones there around that, you know, probably have been in before, you know, anybody knew, and they're coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we gotta get this in, I guess.
Well, my neighbor's has been there for a long time. His was years before ours.
All right, so you have that?
All right, let's see what I got here, okay? Y'all ready for this?
We're ready.
Yep.
I motion for recommendation to the town board as favorable for proposed local law amending Town of Queensbury zoning law to establish renewable energy systems and facility regulations. Subject to clarification of items submitted by staff to the town board. Ta-da!
Sure, then.
I would say just in a report to the town board.
Say what?
I would just say submitted by staff in a report. Just add 3 words, in a report to the town board.
Yeah, that's our authority, to do reports.
We're given our authority to issue the report.
Okay, subject to clarification of items submitted by staff in a report to the town board.
Yes.
Semantics.
Yeah,
No, it's clarity.
Clarity.
on cream.
I'll second the motion.
You wrote it.
All right, we have a resolution and a second. Any other comments? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunziker?
Yes.
Mr. McCollum?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Roy?
Yes.
You want it?
Mr.
Which one, your clip?
Yes.
Actually, I want everything.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Laura. And Brad, you said you wanted to make a comment about the census?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To everyone here and viewing this evening, at the, being involved in with the county, finding out, you know, how important the census is to us. And for some reason, with everybody being home and that, and everything being mailed out, our numbers seem to be very slow in coming in and filling out the census. And so we've been asked to try to help everybody, remind them how important the census is to our area, and for the monies that comes in, and really for the representation that we get to cover our area is most important. So it's kind of been asked of us if we all can just ask 10 people and pass it on, that they ask the 10 people, and just remind them, have you filled out your census and got it in? Because we are running out of time. Right now, it's ending on September 30th. It was October 30th, but it's been changed. We're trying to bump it out a little bit longer. But you know, it's so hard to make these changes. So really, I'm just putting it out there, please. I actually wore my census mask tonight. It's quite comfortable. And really to advertise it, and really, we have our signs out here in front of Queensbury. I know we've had stations put up at a lot of the farmers markets and putting it out there. And if, you know, there's you can fill it out online. You can call up your town offices or your municipalities to see whatever you could do to pick up the form. It's a simple one online, easy to do, and it really is just to give information to help get the correct numbers that we need. So thank you all for taking your time and passing it on for 10 people. That's what we need.
Is there any other business with the planning board tonight? All right, motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.